thank you for agreeing to meet with us, Rafe. We really, really appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure.
And I'm going to ask you a series of questions. And the first is, tell us about your decision to become a solo practitioner, and then the evolution of your practice to a small firm.
Well, I graduated in the spring of 2008, and so by the time I had taken the bar exam and was getting sworn in, the economy was crashing around me. And I guess that's the way of saying that I don't know how much the choice was my own as opposed to just a reaction to the circumstances that I faced. It was, at the same time, I knew that I was going to be picky coming out of school. I didn't want a job simply to be working. I went to law school with a specific purpose, and I wanted to have something that was fulfilling, because I knew that there was a lot of paths that I could take in the law that I probably wouldn't enjoy and wouldn't be a reflection of why I was entering the law in the first place. And so I took it was both I guess fits and starts is the best way to put it, because I had potential clients lined up from before I knew whether I had passed the bar exam or not. And I didn't tell them that I was a lawyer yet. I told them that, in all likelihood I was going to be one. And, I'd lined up those individual clients. I had prepared business cards for myself. And so, very quickly after being sworn in, I did get my PLF insurance and, went forward with my own practice. And it was slow at first. There's no denying that, as someone without a reputation, without an institution behind you, you have a lot of hard work to begin to establish yourself. But I signed up for the referral service through the state bar. I had grown up in Portland, and so I, let everyone that I knew in the community know that I was doing this. And I think there's also a certain shamelessness about it. You have to become comfortable, and it's funny because I wasn't at first telling people that you're a lawyer. I think it's new to you, and it's also, well, when is this appropriate? But I got to the point where I was able to hand out business cards like candy in just about any situation, and I think that that's necessary just to get your name out there and to let people know that the person that they've met and perhaps they like socially or trust for whatever reasons, that there's someone who's going to be able to help out people who they know who may need that assistance. And after I did my own solo practice for about 2.5 to 3 years, and at that point I was getting enough referrals and more complicated cases that I realized that I really needed someone else there. I was either going to be doing the same thing over and over again, or if I wanted to expand what I was able to do, then I needed the support. And so I went through a process of about probably 6 to 8 months of, in some sense, interviewing potential partners, getting to know people, doing little projects with them to see if we worked well together. And out of a group of about 4 or 5 people that I went through those talks with, I ended up with 2 partners, and we formed a firm about 2 years ago.
And what is the name of your firm, and what is your practice focus?
The name of the firm is Intelekia Law Group, and we focus on primarily green and sustainably minded businesses. We're a full-service business firm, so everything from startup to dissolution, from the cradle to the grave, and everything in between. So we'll have clients who we advise on employment contracts. We'll get involved in litigation, whether it's contracts or with other businesses, and that's our primary focus. We also do a decent amount of general civil litigation. I'm pretty heavily involved, along with one of my other partners, in representing homeowners in foreclosure. So that's been a brisk business recently.
Congratulations on your relatively new firm.
Oh, thank you.
What are the benefits of being a small firm or solo practitioner, and what opportunities exist for attorneys who enter into these practices?
Well, I think that one of the biggest benefits is the flexibility. You're able to explore different areas of the law, to make those sort of decisions of either I enjoy this or I don't. And I think that there's the practice of law is extremely different than learning the law. Law school probably teaches you very little about the reality of actually being a lawyer. And so I think that, especially for people coming out of school, it's nice to be able to look forward and say, okay, I'm not consigning myself to a particular area that I don't know whether I'm going to like it or not, but to be able to get a taste of different different fields and the different clients that come with that, and really try and decide what it is that you enjoy doing, as well as what can you be successful doing. And I think back to, I think it was my second year in practice. I was still a solo practitioner, and I sat down with a colleague who was also a relatively new lawyer. He was at a big firm, and I said to him as we were sitting down, I'm really envious of all the resources you have and the ability to walk down the hall and talk to a partner who's been doing this for 20 years and get that guidance from them. And he surprised me by turning to me and saying, I'm really envious of you because I only get to see a small slice of any particular case. And I see the same thing over and over again. I have no idea what the bigger picture looks like. And that's when I sort of became aware of the real potential and power of starting your own practice, is that very early on in your career, you do get a vast variety of experience. And if you're looking to be a trial attorney, you can get in front of judges and even juries, pretty early on in your career, when perhaps someone at a big firm, they're not even allowed to do a deposition yet. That you're already in there in court trying your own cases. And so that opportunity for both educating yourself and for gaining that experience early on, I think is something that a lot of people would really value.
Sounds fantastic. So how have you gone about developing clients and marketing your services?
Well, like I said early on, I started with the State Bar Referral Service, and it's got a variety of different practice areas. And I looked through that and I sort of said, okay, I think that I could do this. I'm not sure if I could do this. And one thing in particular was the landlord-tenant law. I had no experience with that in school, but I looked at the statute. It seemed relatively comprehensible. And I started doing a lot of tenants' rights. And that eventually evolved into the foreclosure defense. My first foreclosure case came to me through an eviction. And so, it's, to some degree, it's picking an area and going with it. Figuring out what you feel comfortable doing and pursuing that. And then, there's the other side of it of networking. And what I found to be one of the biggest helps, and this was not just professionally, but also for my own sanity, was participating in the local bar organizations, both the Young Lawyers section of the Multnomah Bar Association and the New Lawyers division of the State Bar. And that was a great opportunity to meet other people who, while relatively new lawyers, were at different stages of their careers. And some of them were certainly more experienced than I was, and they were a resource for me when I had questions. But then also just having other people to commiserate with, and I think that's the sort of sanity part of, get you out of your office and to just be able to sit down with someone who's in a somewhat similar situation, and empathize with each other and trade war stories and just feel like you're part of something when you're in a profession that I think can be very isolating, regardless of where you are. Whether you're in a big firm or you're on your own, it's a solitary profession, and getting out of those or being aware of the traps of that, I think, is important. And having these structures, and especially the bars here in Portland and Oregon as a whole, I think are very friendly and accommodating, very supportive, and I just felt like that was a bit of a godsend, is having that support structure there, which I didn't even know existed when I was first coming out of school.
And how do you go about marketing to attract your business clients?
So part of the marketing is identifying where the people that you want to serve are going to be. And so rather than going the traditional route of spending a lot of money on whether it's web marketing or print marketing, I've really tried to get out into the community through volunteering, through other social networks. I go to symposiums on sustainable business developments, socials, like here in Portland we have Green Drinks, which is a monthly meeting time just for people who are similarly minded, and that's part of our drive with the firm, is to create a community of clients who are like-minded, and they hold similar principles, even though they may be in very different kinds of business. And giving them the opportunity to also just learn from each other, to see what has been successful for other businesses. And since our focus is on creating that community, I really try and get out there and find those communities that are already existing.
And how do you go about, what sort of a business model do you use in terms of fees for your services, and what recommendations do you have for others who are starting out, who are trying to figure out how to charge for their services?
Well, I think that's certainly one of the challenges, especially for someone who is starting their own practice directly out of school, is there's a sticker shock of traditional lawyer fees. And I remember sitting in one of my first client meetings, and we got to the point where I'd identified some of the legal issues, and we talked about how we could move forward, and it got time to talk about the terms of engagement. And I think that I quoted was probably a pretty low hourly rate for attorneys generally, but as the number came out of my mouth, I think I sort of looked back in shock. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. And that's one of the challenges, is recognizing the services that you are providing to people, and the value of those services, and believing in them yourself. And that's something that, as a new attorney, is hard, because you feel so green, but you're able to provide something that the vast majority of others around you aren't. And you need to be comfortable with asking people to pay for that. At the same time, and this is something that is also very nice about being a solo attorney or in a small firm, is that you can be flexible, and you've got to understand, depending on the demographics that you're working with, or the general economic atmosphere, that some people need help and they're just not able to pay what the market says is a fair rate. And so I've really focused on putting together alternative fee agreements, project-based fees, maybe an hourly rate with a cap, just different ways where you can give your client sort of more surety about what they're going to be facing, the commitment that they're making, and also having that there from the get-go is going to help you collect on those bills. And sometimes you're not going to be able to collect, and that's one of the realities that everyone faces, from the new solo attorney to the big firms. And so you've got to build that into your business model a little bit. And I think that the most important thing, though, is just communicating from the start that these are the expectations, and clearly agreeing on that with your client at the very beginning.
Okay. Have you been satisfied overall with the way it's worked out with your business model and your ability to maintain a successful practice?
Yeah, I find it very satisfying. I can say that I enjoy being a lawyer. That it's been hard. I mean, there was certainly dark times when I didn't think that I don't know if I didn't think that was going to be successful, or if the hard times would just never end. But I think that with a little patience and perspective, it felt like every 6 months or so, I was in a drastically different place than I had been 6 months previously. And regardless of whether looking forward, I was still dissatisfied with what that looked like. If you take the time to take a step back and look at what you have accomplished, I think that's really important. And you'll see that you are evolving very quickly, even though it sometimes feels like you're stuck in the mud.
Describe your experience working with underserved communities and the cultural differences you have encountered.
I was really lucky early on in my practice to come across a member of the Somali community here in Portland, and came to me with a attendance right issue. And this particular gentleman didn't speak any English, and so he brought his nephew along as a translator. And I was able to resolve the situation favorably for him. And more importantly, I struck up a friendship with his nephew, who, because of the trust that I had built with them and the services that I provided, really gave me an entry into that community that I never would have had otherwise. And so I've worked with members of the both Somali and Ethiopian immigrant communities on a variety of legal issues. I'm sort of the default lawyer for some people, regardless of what their issue is. And sometimes I just say I can't handle it, but I'll tell you who can, or I'll point you in the right direction. And it's been really interesting working with them, simply because it is a very different community. And one thing that I found surprising was their approach to contracts. It's almost nothing is written down. And we can talk about, in one particular situation, I was dealing with the sale of a business. It was a $50,000 or $70,000 purchase, and there was nothing written down. They couldn't say what they had bought with any certainty, and that's the way that things are done within that community. And it's very community focused, and there's a level of trust there that sometimes, unfortunately, doesn't go fulfilled. And to deal with that, you have to learn to deal sometimes outside of our legal structure. And so there, we talked about what the problems were legally. I said, well, this is going to be very hard to go to court and prove anything about what you were owed, what you were supposed to receive from them. And then we got into more of a sort of philosophical discussion about how they approach contracts. And then we got to the point where they started talking about how, that oftentimes back in their own country, they would go to the imam of the local mosque and talk to them about these problems. And so I really encouraged them to do that here, and it actually really worked out. They were able to problem solve in a way that I couldn't through our legal system, and I think it served them well. So you have to sometimes just think more creatively about how things work and get to know what the norms are of their culture, so that you can, work within those, and try and see where they mesh with our traditional legal structure.
So how did you go about getting to know the norms of the culture? What strategies did you use, or how did you go about doing that?
Well, I think that a lot of it is just being able to listen to someone, and I think that you sometimes you have to check your sort of lawyer brain, at the door, and put that aside, because oftentimes we just want to analyze a situation and say, this is the way that it's likely to turn out. From everything that you've told me, from the evidence that's here, based on my experience, this is what a judge is going to say. This is, the end point of the situation. And, rather than making those quick assessments, I think that you have to step back and really just be willing to learn, about them, as community members in a community that you don't understand. You have to have humility. You have to be able to listen, and you have to build some trust with them so that they'll answer questions. I think that a lot of times there's a hesitancy, especially when people have been taken advantage of, to share with someone who doesn't seem like them, or who's simply an outsider in whatever way. And I think that actually applies across the clients that I deal with. Is a lot of times they don't want to say something wrong to their lawyer. They are afraid of saying the wrong thing, and you really have to work with them slowly and let them know that everything may be important, and that what you're able to do for them is going to be limited, the more they hold things back. And so it's building that rapport with people, building trust, having them feel like they won't be judged by you, and that's going to make your practice much more fruitful, I think, regardless of who you're dealing with.
And tell us about the nonprofit that you started with the Somali community.
So I eventually, I guess I'll start over. The friend that I had made within the Somali community started to come to me with a variety of similar problems, with different clients. And it came out that there's at least a segment of the community that felt like they were being preyed upon by a group that held themselves out as helping new arrivals, immigrants and refugees, but perhaps wasn't serving their interests. And originally, the community members who came to me said, we want to put a stop to this group. We want to punish them, or we want to sue them. This needs to end. And I looked at it and I just said, I don't know how much we can really do, but what if we did something else? What if we actually started a group that would provide these services, and we see that there's a need in the community and it's not being met. So what can we do to help fulfill that need? And that gave birth to the African Youth and Community Organization, which is ICO, and we work with immigrant and refugee children, primarily African, but really any demographic. And we have a dual after-school tutoring program, both in mathematics and language. And then there's a cultural aspect as well, teaching them their cultural heritage, making sure that they maintain ties with who they were and where they came from. And then we have a sports component as well. And the sports program is the carrot that we hold out and say, okay, if you do these other things, then we'll give you a structure, and we enter soccer and basketball tournaments throughout the summer, and we're working on actually right now finalizing a contract with the Portland Public Schools to teach them their how to read and write in their native languages, because many of these children before arriving here have spent oftentimes years in refugee camps. They've never been through formalized schooling, and we're fortunate that with the Somali language, it uses the English alphabet. And so the idea was that we would teach them how to read and write in their own language first, and then those skills would transfer over to their ESL classes and their regular school classes. So it's been a real joy to be involved with that and to see it continuing to grow as well.
Congratulations. We really look forward to watching that organization thrive and hearing
Well,
regular updates from you. Please tell us about what services the Oregon New Lawyers Division offers to attorneys who are becoming solo and small firm practitioners.
So, I talked earlier about how it just provides you an outlet and gives you a setting to meet people in similar situations. There's also many more formalized structures that they have put together. One is the professional skills through public service project, where people are matched with local organizations, essentially in an internship, with the hope that's going to turn into a job. And even if the position doesn't open up, they'll have been through a mentorship program. I am the co-chair of the Oregon New Lawyers Division Pro Bono Subcommittee, and we really focus on providing practical skill training through CLEs, but then matching people with pro bono clients and providing them mentorship if we can, so that from the very start you can both build up your professional skills and get experience, but then also be serving the community around you at the same time. And I know that the New Lawyers Division and the Young Lawyers section of the Multnomah Bar Association are both very active, and they're really looking for different ways to work with people who are starting their own practices, and to help them in that first stage of their career. So anyone who's thinking about doing this or who has done it, I'd strongly encourage them to get involved with the bar organizations and to really explore what that can do for them.
Okay, thank you. And do you have anything else to add?
I don't believe so.
Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.